All right. Welcome to the Texas Teams community meeting for November. Today is November 12th. I'm Michael Kennedy. I am the Modern Work Customer Success Manager for the state of Texas. I cover all of the agencies here that are in the state of Texas, as well as I cover the city of Austin. And then I have peers who cover the other cities, the counties, locals. But all of you are welcome, and really appreciate everybody joining today. We've got about 90 people on the call already. So thank you for joining. So today, let me advance our slide. There we go. Let me go back here one. So as always, I want to thank the DIR. Joy Hall Bryant with the DIR has been such a great partner on our Texas Teams community, as well as we now have communities for Azure and for the Power Platform. And so we are expanding this idea behind having communities of interest for our agencies and our government friends. And so again, thank you, Joy, and thank you, DIR, for your support of this community and always being so great to work with. I just wanted to share this. This was the picture that I captured last month when we went into the new mode, which is called Together Mode, and that's going to be rolling out. You may already have it in your agency tenant. And so this is just a different view into a meeting that is has been proven. We've done a lot of research to be less fatiguing on being in a meeting and really help you see more of the visual cues that are typical in an in-person meeting. And so just a fun little picture there. A reminder that we do have the Teams community interest list. And what this is this is a list where you can sign up to get updates on the Teams community. Because we only have about 90 people so far that have signed up for that, I'm still sending out the meeting request to everyone who has attended meetings in the past. I missed a couple of people this time, so thank you both for emailing me just a little while ago to say, hey, I haven't gotten my invite. But I do also include anybody on that Teams community interest list when I send out the emails. I have had a couple of people say, can you please stop inviting me to these meetings? And so you do have the option to remove yourself from the interest list as well, or from the invitation list if you would like. And I'll do my absolute best to remove you from the list. I'm not using this is a little bit of a grassroots effort, this Texas Teams community, and so I'm not using a bunch of CRM or automated email tools or any of that kind of thing. I really actually just do it pretty old school and pretty manually. So if I invite you and you requested to be removed, just let me know and I will double down on my efforts to take you off the list. So you can hit the shortened URL here at the bottom, and that will take you to the form to fill out, or you can hold up your smartphone and scan this QR code, and it'll take you to the form you can fill out. And I kept that QR code on our next slide, so if you didn't quite get it. So here's the agenda for today. So today's session is going to be all about adoption, and there's a lot of great resources, new assets that are available to assist you with the adoption effort. And I really want to go through some of these new assets and talk about them and how they can be used, some of the best practices we are seeing. And then we have a fantastic stories from the field. This month, we have a Texas Workforce Commission that is going to be talking about their Tech Talk coffee breaks that they implemented as part of their effort to drive deep Teams adoption. And they have achieved 93% active usage, which means that 93% of the employees in their organization are using Teams on a regular basis, which is actually the highest percentage of any agency here in Texas, and really high. And I really do attribute these. There were a whole lot of efforts that Chris Bunton and his team took on to drive that level of awareness and adoption and training. The Tech Talk coffee breaks were a great one that I wanted to highlight. And so we'll talk a little bit about what they did. And then I really want to have an open discussion. I'd like to just open it up to have a conversation about what is your agency doing to drive adoption? What are you seeing that is being successful? Are there some things that you tried and didn't work out? Again, this community is all about sharing and all about helping each other. And so I would just ask y'all to be ready to come off mute and share ideas. Use the raise your hand feature, which is the little hand right up at the top. And you can just raise your hand and let me know that you would like to say something. If someone could keep an eye on the chat, if there are any questions that come up, I will try to glance down at that every once in a while and see if there is something that's a question at that time. Let's see. Okay.
Mike, I was going to offer to watch the chat for you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Is that Keith?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Keith. Sure appreciate that. All right. So the first thing I always like to start with is for those of you who are new to Teams or new to our Texas Teams community, welcome to the team. Someone brought up the other day that this wasn't their team, their soccer team. So sorry about that. This is just a random picture that I picked because I just liked it. But we are really seeing wonderful growth in the use of Teams here in the state of Texas. And that's both across Texas agencies and the city of Austin. So when we started this effort to drive Teams in January, there were about 7,000 users of Teams. We obviously had a very large uptick as everyone started to go home and was forced to work from home with COVID-19. But we are really still seeing significant growth. I ran out of room, and so I started having to go every couple of months. But just since September, we had about 4,300 new Teams users here in the Texas agencies, and we have a couple of very large agencies that are about to go live with Teams. And so we should see some very significant increases in the December and January timeframe. The city of Austin, we're already heavy users of Teams, but I was very impressed to see that they had another 600 people adopt Teams between September and November. And David Gottlieb, who was a guest of ours a couple of months ago, has really been a big proponent of Teams and Office 365, as well as all of the leaders throughout the city of Austin. So appreciate their leadership across the multiple departments that they have. Great job, and we'll keep at it. And what I'm seeing is that across our agencies who have adopted Teams, we're seeing 65, 75, 80% active usage, which means and what I measure that off of is the number of Exchange email inboxes, because sometimes the number of licenses you own doesn't really equate the number of users. And so when we look at that percentage of active users, that is people who are literally actively using Teams. However, I find sometimes that the usage is pretty basic. It's still IM and chat, still kind of being used like Skype 2.0. And so as we as agencies start to look towards retiring Skype, and Skype is going end of life at the end of July, so we'll be turning off Skype. We really want to bring our users along and make sure that we get people to stop using Skype and start using Teams. But really, part of the adoption materials I'd like to go through today are all about how do we increase the proficiency and the level of usage that people are getting out of Teams, and so that they're using some of the more advanced features and really getting the full benefit of the platform. And so that's what we're going to continue to drive toward, so that it's not just using it to its lowest common denominator, but really using it for some of these higher level features. And so the thing that really drove me toward wanting to have this session all about adoption are some of the materials that have come out recently and the latest guidance. And there is this fantastic asset, and the URL where it is hosted is very strange. This is a Microsoft produced pamphlet, digital pamphlet, and there is another version for commercial sector that is hosted on a Microsoft website. So I don't think there's anything weird or nefarious going on. But if this one stops working, then I have included a slide with lots of links about all of the adoption materials that we're going to go through today. The Teams for U.S. Government adoption guide here is the one that I was just showing. There's also the Teams adoption guide for commercial sector. So some of our agencies are using commercial tenants. And so there's just a little bit of a difference. But this one with the U.S. government adoption guide is really targeted. A lot of the content is targeted toward our governmental agencies and cities, municipalities, the counties, and everything else. And
hey, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, there was a question in the chat.
Thank you.
Is Skype being discontinued for personal OS 365, or is it just the public that you're ending it on?
Yeah, thank you, Mary. And that's a good question. So there is still Skype, which was before Microsoft bought Skype and then changed what used to be called Link to Skype. There was the Skype Personal, which was it's used all over the world. It is similar to WhatsApp and some other of the more end-user, public-facing chat and video conferencing applications, and so that will continue to exist. However, any Office 365 Skype is going to go away. And we're retiring that infrastructure. So we now give away Teams for our non-business customers. And so you can use Teams instead of Skype if you're an individual. And then, of course, we have the Skype for the, then we have Teams for Office 365. This is more full-featured. Good question, Mary. So thank you. And thanks, Keith. I appreciate you bringing that up and helping me know that there was a question. So let me go through, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and really show what each of these are, and then what I really see the value in those, and then and make sure that you have links to all of these. When we look at adoption, adoption is really not just about turning on features and then providing some training, but which are both great, but it is really about a full effort between your communications group, your IT group, your training group. I know we have Janelle on the phone here or on the line with Health and Human Services, and so it is a team sport to really make users. There's a methodology called ADKAR, and the first is awareness, so being aware that this is actually available. The second is D, which stands for desire, and desire is really I'm not being forced to use this, I actually want to use this. And then K stands for knowledge, and that's really where the training comes in. And then A is for adoption, and then R is for reinforcement. So how do we continue to train and continue to reinforce the use of this new thing that we're bringing out? And so that ADKAR methodology is really highlighted through in the materials that we have through some of these assets. So let me bring up.
Michael, while you're doing that.
Yes, thank you.
There was a question in the chat that says, where can we get the latest guidance and materials? So I'm assuming that question is pertaining to those lists of links that you're using. Is that slide deck going to be made available, or is there?
Oh, it is.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just stop there.
Yeah, so what I do after each of these sessions is I send out an email to everyone with a PDF, or Joy has sent it out in the past as well. And maybe if Joy is sending it to the distribution list, maybe it isn't getting to you. And so what I'll do is I'll at the end of this meeting, I will send out a link with a PDF of the slide deck. And what I'll also do is take those links and I will put them into the body of the email itself, so you don't have to go through the slide deck. But if you do go to the slide deck, then let's take a look here. It is on slide 10, and you are welcome to use these slides for any purposes. And if you do want the actual PowerPoint, I'm happy to send it to you. It gets pretty big because of all the images that I put in there, and so but I am happy to share the PowerPoint with you. But you'll have a PDF version that's a little bit easier to move around. So the first of these assets that I really want to highlight for y'all, let me just bring this back into slideshow mode, is this Adoption Hub. So when I came across the Adoption Hub, and there are so many resources and assets that are out there, I mean, there are hundreds that I didn't highlight today. This one I found, is just such a massive body of information and knowledge. So there's a here about simplifying and accelerating user adoption. And if you click here to these different tabs, and you can there's actually some great content even just in the little header up here. And so lots of good things here. But if you scroll down, then what you have is the adoption journey assets for each of these different products that are inside of the Microsoft Office 365 suite. And so if we focus on Teams for just a second, then it will actually take you to a page where all of the assets are for Teams. And let's see, there we go. It already did. So getting started, engaging your organization, training, building champions, securing the environment. So each of the different technologies have these same categories. And so you can go and as you drill into this, there is just a wealth of information here that is available, and it's really organized into very nice lists. And so one of the things I did is pulled some of the assets out of these lists and went ahead and brought those to the forefront for you so that they would be a little bit easier to find. And so the second, so this is a site that has a lot of materials on it. You could literally spend days going through all these materials. So if you're in charge of adoption for your agency, then this is a great place to start. Put into a really appealing visual format is a lot of the same material, as well as a lot of just different assets that you can download. And so this is a meeting Microsoft Teams for Government. So there are embedded videos in here. There are different assets and blog posts and articles about transformation that's occurring. There are one-pager sheets that you can download. Just flip through here. There's a couple of case references that are here. There are different capabilities that are highlighted and different information that's provided there. There's a whole section here on what is our strategy and where are we really going with this, and what's our goal. There is guidance on teamwork and tools, on the government roadmap. So this is something that is I'm frequently asked about. So when is that feature coming? Now, I will say, in full disclosure, that this roadmap is not as accurate as it should be. And so, let me flip back to. It is indicative of where we're going and the capabilities that are going to be rolling out, but sometimes features get released more quickly than they're projected, and sometimes they're released more slowly than projected. So they are working on the accuracy of the roadmap, and I'm going to apologize in advance for the fact that it is not as accurate as it should be. There's also a lot about security, governance, and compliance, and so I know that Shar was talking about this, and I apologize. The first person that was asking about retention policies before we started the recording of the call. There's quite a bit about the Teams Admin Center and governance management and lifecycle for Microsoft Teams, and a security and compliance overview. So really good materials here on some of those capabilities around retention. And then also, these are things more about the Office 365 plans. Y'all all really already own these capabilities, and so not much there. But as you can see, there is one of our data centers in San Antonio. If you didn't know that, we have a government data center here in Texas. So a lot of your assets that are in Office 365 actually never leave the bounds of Texas, except for the fault tolerance and redundancy and backup. And then a really nice three-phase approach to Teams, as well as planning templates. So these are templates that are project plans, documents, checklists, really great assets that are part of this planning template. So a lot of the agencies that I work with, when they were working on putting together a plan for rolling out Teams prior to COVID, and some of them we were actually right in the middle of our project plan and rolling out Teams in a really structured, phased out approach. And then COVID hit, and I was just kind of, okay, just turn it on. And so some of us actually need to go back and probably look at the decisions that we could have made along the way by using some of these planning templates, and actually maybe do some restructuring, or maybe think about the way that we're going to lay out our sites and our teams and our channels. So I think even if you're deployed, this could have some real value in helping you step through some thinking about the process. And yes, I agree, Shar, the page turn on this is super cool. And I don't think it's Flash. I don't even know what technology they're using, but it is pretty nice. Now,
Mike, did you say that information is in the adoption page, or is that someplace else?
Well, so you can, there is a lot of this information that is in the adoption page, like the adoption guide, the adoption quick start checklist, the governance quick start. And so a lot of it is here. but the actual the planning template, this is a great place to download it right here. Okay. And let's see.
Cool. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. And then a whole bunch of links. Oops, sorry. My mouse accidentally clicked. There are a lot of those same assets that are on the adoption page here are right here. And these are the adoption assets here, IT professional training assets here, and then a lot of documented guidance. Again, as we move toward retiring Skype, we're going to have a session probably January about Skype to Teams, and part of the session will be about resources that Microsoft has available through our Fast Track program, as well as other assets that we have that can help you in the planning of turning off Skype. Our first agency to turn off Skype was TDLR, the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, and Simon Sked and Teresa over at TDLR really planned it out very nicely and had a flawless execution on their turning off of Skype. So it can be done. It can be done successfully and with very little grumbling from the user community if we plan it out properly.
Hey, Mike.
So yes, sir.
Sorry. So about restructuring. Can I, as an admin, move chats and files from one team channel to another team channel?
Yeah, great question, Russell. So yes, it can be done. However, it does involve using PowerShell. There is no graphical user interface or GUI for that. In my previous role, before I came back to Microsoft, I was at Catapult Systems, and I've told the story before. And you, sorry, you can't stop me if you heard it because I want to share it with others. But we adopted Teams very early, and we adopted what we thought was going to be a good structure for our teams and our channels. Well, it turned out that it wasn't. It just didn't scale well. It didn't use the chat feature of the channels particularly well, and so we needed to completely restructure that into a different top-level schema for the way that we were going to lay out our sites. Our teams and our channels. And so a couple of very brave individuals spent the whole weekend running PowerShell scripts to move all of those chats and move all the files. It can be done. It takes some doing. That was Catapult Systems where I worked before. They are on the DIR lists, and so if you wanted to reach out to them, if you search on the DIR website, then you can find someone at Catapult that can help you talk through that and maybe do a workshop for you or something along that line. But that is it absolutely can be done, but it's not for not for the beginner. It's pretty technically advanced. So this is the adoption guide, the commercial sector one. It's very similar. It just has a little bit of different content, and so I'm not going to flip through the whole thing, but that is also available on the link. So one of the things that we get requests for is the admin training, and the next asset that is on that adoption list is the admin training for Microsoft Teams, and there is some really good technical training that is available, and this is all these different sections. So there's the video, there's the decks, there are the Microsoft Ignite sessions around Teams administration. And then there are also assets that are available through LinkedIn Learning, a lot of which are freely available that you can look at, as well as more assets available through Microsoft.com. So there really is as much information as you can shake a stick at for all these different areas. Teams rooms, there's interactive guides to assist you. And quick start guides and tutorials and actual courses where you can get certified, both as there's a teamwork certification, and then there's also a service adoption specialist certification, which is pretty cool. There is a help desk guide as well. In my research preparing for this session, I came across this help desk guide, and this is a PDF. And the beginning sections really are talking about the Skype to Teams transition. And so as you start reading through it, I thought, oh, well, this is just about Skype to Teams. But if you keep going through, then you will find the sections that are really about your help desk. And so let me just scroll down here. So again, these are common scenarios. Again, this is all about Skype to Teams. And then here are the best practices for Microsoft Teams help desk support. And so here's the known issues list. And then there are support resources for Microsoft Teams, admin training, rollout quick start, connectivity issues. So this is really some guidance for your help desk when they need to assist somebody with connectivity issues. So take a look at this. The list just kind of keeps going. A lot of great information that you can share with your help desk team. All right, any questions there? Yeah, good. Okay, good, Jennifer. I'm glad that you like that. All right. Yeah, and Russell, it's not just one script. It's a lot of scripts, the PowerShell scripts. So there are also sometimes with Teams, what I found is that even though you know what Teams can do, and you may have been through some training about the different capabilities and features, sometimes just thinking about, okay, how would I apply that to my job doesn't necessarily click. And so there's two things really for that. The first is that they have these fantastic day in the life guides for all of these different roles. Now, a lot of these are across any industry, including government sector, and then there's some that are more for like retail guide. Like there isn't that much retail in public sector, a retail associates guide. But if we go up here to the things like the remote worker guide, we're all remote workers these days, or the IT project manager guide, or the HR guide. I'll just click on one of these. And so you can download any of these as PDFs and you can share those with people in your organization. A great way to do that would be to take the file and post it in your channel for your HR group. And so this just really goes through the person's day and talks about things that they can do with Teams and might spark some ideas about how they would use Teams. Now, of course, after dinner, they shouldn't be logging on to work. They should be spending time with, outside of work. But that's just my personal belief there. And so each of these guides has this same level of detail about that particular role. So I think these are very helpful for just spurring some different ideas. Okay, any more?
So, Mike, yeah. I got one in the chat room that says this is from Katie Richardson. Our team facilitates a lot of live events. We've noticed that presenters can override the live feed by sharing content without the producer pushing it to the queue or sharing. Any tips?
So I have seen that before. In fact, when we were working with Texas Parks and Wildlife, they had it was basically a glitch where when they would take something and they would share it, it would just bypass in live events, you have like a little queue area here, and then you have the visual of what's live. And so this queue is really great because you can put things there and then you can bring it over into the live view. Well, when that's not working, it really there can be some surprises with things getting out there. So what they did is they worked with they used to be called TAMs, or Technical Account Manager, through their support contract. They're now called CSAMs, Customer Success Account Managers. Put a trouble ticket in with Microsoft. That is typically, it is just a glitch in your tenant and that needs to be fixed. So I apologize that you're having that challenge, but that's what to do when you have that problem. And I've seen it before. I don't know how it happens, but it can be fixed. So thank you very much for asking that question. Okay. So one of our organizations, one of our customers that we work with, a big agency, asked about how do you think about laying out teams and channels. Depending on the governance that you have put in place, you may have it locked down so that only the IT group can create teams and channels, or you may have it very freely open. A lot of our agencies have it open so that people can create teams and channels. Maybe they have like a naughty words list blocked where you can't include that word in a team when you're creating it, because it creates an email and a SharePoint site and all of these other assets whenever you create a Microsoft team. So regardless of where you are, thinking about how you organize your teams and channels, and including private channels, is something that is a really great topic. And so one of our customers asked about this because they were really thinking that the organizational structure would be the right way to organize your teams and your channels. And it is. However, there are also needs around projects or particular initiatives, or maybe some kind of a transformation that's going on inside your agency. So there is actually multiple organizational structures that can be leveraged together, sort of hybrid next to each other. And this video does a fantastic job of going through the decisions that you would make and what, why you would make them, how to support them, and how you think through what you might create. It also really recognizes the fact that one size does not fit all. And there's a great companion PowerPoint deck that you can download that is really good if you are part of a planning committee for teams and channels and organization of private channels. This can really help you in, it's got all these Visios and diagrams and all kinds of assets that are part of that PowerPoint. So highly recommend that. And then as we, several of our agencies have really started to use private channels. And so a private channel, if you don't know, when you create a team, there's always a general channel that is created. And then you can create additional channels. Maybe it's the team side is HR, and maybe you have benefits as one and hiring as one. But maybe you want to, the HR team wants to discuss things that are very specific to just the HR, just HR leadership, but wants the other areas to be shared across the organization. And so you can create a private channel, which actually creates a different SharePoint infrastructure that is confined to a subset of the members. So what that means is, let's just say you have the whole organization as a member inside of your HR team site so that you can share materials with them. The HR group is one of the, they're all employees, and so they are a subset of that total membership of the top level team site. So a member of a private channel has to be a member of the team site, but all of the other people can't see what's inside of the private channel unless they are a member of the private channel. In fact, they don't even see that there is a private channel. And so it's a really great way that without creating yet another team, you can have an area for your leadership to think. Keith, do you have your hand up about another question?
I do. We got another question.
Perfect.
From
That's
the room.
great.
Plus, I also wanted to share that piece of information just made a proposal that I'm working on even better. So what's the recommendation to manage the private channel backend SharePoint sites? That was the question from Russell.
Yeah, so there is a very good detailed description that is here. And so if you, it's a pretty deep topic, but it is when you create a team, then it creates what's called a group, and that creates a SharePoint. It's called a site collection, and that involves, it creates a SharePoint document library, it creates a OneNote file, it creates a wiki and a couple of other assets that are created by default. And it creates an email address that is the same name as the team site. So if your team was named Human Resources, then you would have Human Resources at, let's just say, hhsc.texas.gov or twc.texas.gov. And so when you create a private channel, it actually does not use that same SharePoint infrastructure. It creates a second SharePoint infrastructure. And so what I would recommend is that you don't go in and mess with the permissions inside of the private channel, the private channel SharePoint site. You add your members and you remove your members by using the Teams interface. And so you could get yourself out of sync with the members inside of your team site and the members that you have inside of your SharePoint permission. Something to watch out for. So if that was sort of where you were angling, then maybe that answers your question. The other thing, yeah.
Oh, sorry, you were going to say before you. There is another couple of questions, so finish your thought.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So the other thing to think about with the private channels. Give me a second. Sorry, my brain is a little bit squishy today. It seems like. I'm gonna have to think of that in a minute. Go ahead, Keith. What was the other question?
So the other question that I see is can you ever make a private channel public by chance?
No, you can't. And so by its very nature, you can't fold it back into the public because it's a different SharePoint structure that it creates when you create the private channel. Yeah, good question, Elizabeth. Thank you. And yeah, so Star, that's a great point. So if you set up governance and you do something like there are ways when you when an office, I'm sorry, when the Microsoft Teams team is being created, there are things you can do like prepend a name onto the actual site name. And so you can do something like O365 dash. And so let's just say you create a site or a team, I'm sorry, called human resources. And so when that's created, the email address and the group name that are created in the backend would actually prepend O365 dash. So it's easy to find in your global address list, and you can do blocking and filtering on that so that all those email addresses aren't exposed. But you can block any sort of you can put a list of like naughty words, and you can download that list if you just Google for it. And you can put that list in that blocks people from using a naughty word in, or any word that you add to this blocked list. They can't use that word in the name of a team site at the time of creation. However, as Star points out, team owners can rename the team, and the team admin doesn't get notified. Renaming the team, as she very accurately says, does not rename the associated mailbox or the SharePoint site or any of the backend infrastructure. It just renames the display name. You just can't, and I'm just going to be a little blunt, you can't cure stupid. And that's not a very nice way to say it, but the names that some people put on work team sites is just mind-boggling. And so, yeah, people can rename them things that are just quite crazy. So we'll just leave it at that. Yeah, teams getting created in a later date. Someone asks for an email or DL to be created with the same name, use the team. Yeah, so and no, Teresa, there's not a way to stop that, to stop them from renaming. You could have only IT as owners of sites, but that's not the right thing to do. And so it is a problem. And so one of the things that you can also do is block team creation names for things like human resources, payroll, executive group, the name of your commissioner, all these kinds of things, so that you can actually keep people from taking the names that you want to assign to more of a top level team as part of your organizational structure. So great point there. Okay, so let me move along a little faster here. Great question. So I love that. The last thing I really want to highlight, and I've talked about this, I think pretty much every session that we've had, is around learning pathways. And I was previously pretty impressed with learning pathways, but the more I learn about it, and the more I learn how our customers are starting to use it, the more impressed I've become. And so one of the links you'll have is this overview of what learning pathways is. And then there is also, and I'm going to show it to you in just a second. Now, let me do that now. So learning pathways, and I want to thank Matt Abatiello. He is one of my fellow customer success managers out of the Northeast. He has this set up in his demo tenant, and he let me have access to his. And so I just want to say thank you to him. I'm actually logged in as
my hour and a half long Teams community meeting is just droning on and on.
Philip, you're not on mute, so sorry.
There's always good information in it. DIR puts it together and they talk about different stuff, and so some of it's focused towards them rather than what UT has. But.
All right, I'm going to mute Philip just for his benefit. Yeah, and so if you're one of our educational guests, then this is more focused around the agencies, and so yeah, I know that's the danger of the mute button. So the Learning Pathways site is something that you can install into your SharePoint environment, your SharePoint Online environment, and it is a whole training site that is provided at no cost by Microsoft. And so this is the default out-of-the-box look. Again, I'm logged in as the admin, so I'm getting these admin capabilities. And so when your users click on this by default, then it takes them to a whole site where it has training available for all of the different technologies that are part of Microsoft 365. And so if you go into the Teams section, then here are all these classes that are available on Teams: the Quick Start, Intro to Teams, setting up and attending live events, collaborating in teams and channels. And so all of this content is hosted by Microsoft. It's just the front end that is hosted inside your SharePoint Online. And you don't have to update the content. You don't have to maintain anything. And you have the ability to go in and pick which of these videos are available. So maybe inside of your organization, you're not planning on using Yammer, or you're in a government cloud and you don't have Yammer. And so you can click Yammer right here, and you can just block all of the content that is about Yammer just by turning it off like that. So it is a very easy to administer and very powerful, and it is no cost. Now, it is not a learning management system. You are able to put together what we call learning pathways, where that's a structured list of classes that you might recommend that somebody takes. And you can create your own custom content, or you can put YouTube videos as links inside of here. So there's a lot that you can do, and there's a whole lot of information about the administration. Now, another really, really cool thing about learning pathways that's just really come out in the last about 2-3 months is the ability to take learning pathways and actually embed it inside of Teams. And so this is our demo tenant here. And if I go right here,
hey, Michael.
Yes.
Your image has moved away from on screen, and now it's just you and the small group. So I don't know, did you change your presentation setup somehow?
Let me stop sharing and then reshare. Thank you, Keith.
It looks fine here. It did until you did that.
Okay, let me share.
Fine on my side too.
Yeah,
I love that. It did until you did that.
You had gone down to the small screen for me. That's weird. Okay, well, now there you go.
Okay, now are you seeing a team site that says welcome to the team? And
yes.
Yep. Okay, wonderful. So this is, again, this is a demo tenant. It just has demo content in it. What I want to show you is that right here, we're able to take the learning pathways site and what we call pin learning pathways as an app that's available inside of Teams. Now, by going into the administrator, the Teams administrator, you can actually lay it out so that this, like in this case, this Contoso Learning, you could put it at the very top, right up here, like where this App Studio is. And so when a user clicks on the icon, and again, it could be listed right here with these other icons, what it does is it opens up learning pathways. And in this case, for Contoso, we're driving a OneDrive learning campaign and working with our communications team. And so the thing that we're highlighting first is OneDrive. But if you can come right over here to Microsoft Teams, and those same videos and all the same tutorials are now available right inside of Teams. And what we found is that when we pin an app, an icon to the side here, it's 7 times more discoverable, more likely to be used. And now you're not having to worry about sending emails asking someone to go to a website. Instead, you just put it in Teams, and you could have your communications group use Teams to let people know about the app in Teams. And as I said, you can pin it right here to the top, and you can come up with your own name, your own icon. There's a lot that you can do. If you are interested in more information about learning pathways, then please send me an email. It's michael.kennedy@microsoft.com. And I think we're going to do a technical session on how to implement this. Several of our agencies are in the process of pinning the learning pathways to Teams. And I really see it as the best practice for training. You can also do, you could put your HR site or your IT site where you submit trouble tickets and all those kinds of things, or another learning site. You can put those as custom links right here along the top. Okay, so that is, and there's a whole driving adoption of learning pathways content here, and there's an adoption kit that is, all of this is really good content, and all of those links are in the PowerPoint that I'm going to send you. And this is an article on how to embed and how to put the app right there on that left rail like I talked about.
Cool. Hey, Mike, there's a couple of other questions in here.
Perfect.
Curious, does this integrate with an LMS that can help with a more one-stop shop for learners is one.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is, did it become available for the GCC?
Yeah, Jose, it did become available in GCC about 2 months ago, the ability to pin a learning pathway site to the left-hand rail. And that demo site that I was just showing, that is actually a GCC tenant. And so, because we work in the government community, then we have access to create a government tenant. So this is actually a GCC tenant that is running inside of.
So Mike, I'm sorry, I was looking at through just on my side had our apps look. So that's going to be in the connectors or in personal apps?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a little bit in the weeds. And so first, in SharePoint, if you go to the document that I link in the PowerPoint, then it'll show you. And I follow these directions, and I set it up in my demo tenant. I just didn't have time to get it pinned to the left-hand rail, so Matt let me borrow his demo tenant. So you won't see the ability to add learning pathways as an app. It's not an app. What you do is you actually use this tool called App Studio to make it into an app. And what you can do is you can take a modern SharePoint site and make it into an app by wrapping it into using this App Studio. It wraps it and makes it an app that can be a custom upload into Teams. And then as the administrators, you can then push it out as an app and put it on the left rail.
Cool. That's really all I need right there. I can chase the rest. If I need to call you, I'll call you.
Perfect. That sounds great. Okay.
Did you want to cut back to the LMS? I believe I heard
yes.
you said that it didn't connect to an LMS, correct? Or could there be a way?
It's not an LMS in that you're not able to do things like create a schedule that people and put training together and assign it to people and check when they've done it. So it doesn't have those capabilities. It does have the ability to integrate additional content. There is a thing called an app template that is a little bit more where you can publish training to someone through Teams, but it also is not an LMS. And so if you truly need an LMS, like there is an LMS, and I'm not promoting one over the other, but there's one called LMS 365 or 365 LMS. It actually has an app for Teams that you can use on the left rail, and it is a full-featured LMS, and you can upload content into it, and it's SCORM compliant and all of those kinds of great LMS things that you need. But this isn't one of them. Yeah, good question.
Okay, cool. Thanks, sir.
Okay, absolutely. So, did the Learning Pathways demo. Other thing that I just want to highlight from a training perspective, I always like to highlight this because it is just such a good program. The Microsoft Store, we used to have the stores. They're unfortunately all closed. We're deprovisioning the stores except for 4 of them worldwide. However, we've taken all of that staff and retained them, and they are now all doing virtual training, and they're fantastic at it. Many of our agencies have utilized this. It's called the Customer Success Training, or CST training. We've highlighted it last month. And so if you go and look at the recording from last month, I'll send out the link to the recordings as well as the playlist of previous recordings. Then, and here's an email address that you can send an email to request the training. It's no cost. They'll do as many as you need. And it has a whole catalog of training that's available, not just Teams, but also SharePoint and Planner and Power BI, all kinds of good things. So can't say enough good things about this whole team.
Another quick question.
Yes.
Is there a limit on folks that can access learning pathways? Is it based on our tenant number?
So it is, unless you enable it as an external site, then it is just a site for your agency employees to use, or your educational institution, or the city employees to use. So there isn't a limit. In other words, it scales really well. So no, there's no limit to the number of users that can use it. And they don't have to have an E5 or some super high level license. I think even if they have a license that allows them to access SharePoint, then they can access Learning Pathways. Great question. So on to our next section. I went quite a bit long, but there were really, really good questions. So again, thank you for all of those questions as we went through. I really want to just put a warm welcome out. I've gotten to work with Chris Bunton ever since. Chris, were you at Health and Human Services Commission so many years ago? Yeah. And so Chris is now the Infrastructure Services Director at the Texas Workforce Commission. One of his team is Henry Stewart. He is a Microsoft 365 team lead, and they again, I spoke about them at the beginning of the meeting. They have about 93% active usage of Teams and have just done a fantastic job. And what I'd love to do is have Chris talk through a little bit about some of the approaches they used to really drive awareness, executive support, and then this concept that they came up with called the Tech Talk Coffee Breaks. Some of the feedback that they got from their CIO, from comments that were sent to their CIO about the Tech Talk Coffee Breaks, are just really say it all. And so, Chris, again, welcome to you and Henry. Appreciate you joining, and maybe you could share a little bit about your journey that you went on with Teams.
Sure, and Henry had to drop off and attend the meeting for me.
Okay,
but I'll take care of it. So I think what's important is when we start talking about Teams, let me just back up. We had, whenever we tried, and by the way, welcome. I think the avenues that Microsoft and DR put on are very helpful. And a lot of my colleagues that I worked with at different agencies are on here. But we try to have the best value when we roll out new technologies. So one of the things we started prior to COVID was we did a presentation with the executives. And based on that presentation, I met with each executive one-on-one. And we didn't just show them Teams. In full transparency, we showed them Power BI. We showed them Planner, Stream, MFA, and other tools, most of which were Microsoft that we already paid for, just were underutilized. And we found out from those meetings what was most important to them. Some of them were very interested in Teams, some were more interested in Planner, and so forth. At the beginning of the year, we started having what we call Tech Talk Coffee Breaks. The idea was simple. You know, everybody wants training. The challenge is no one wants to sit through day training, or even an hour. It gets to be kind of daunting. So the concept was pretty simple: short, to the point illustrations, and then open the mic at half the meeting for folks to ask any technical questions. We first started doing these in person. They were so popular, we haven't been able to recuse ourselves. And when we first started having them, we served coffee and donuts, to be honest with you, hence the name. So for some of the folks that were just always asking questions about these new technologies and new innovations, it was very helpful for them. You know, they didn't quite squeeze coming most interesting to them. And that part, we call it the open mic part, has been very.
Hey, Chris, you're cutting in and out for me. Is he cutting in and out for others, or is it just me?
How about that?
Okay, I was just about to ask the same question.
There we go. Now we can hear you, Chris.
Okay, sorry about that. So the Tech Talk Coffee Breaks intended to be simple, short, and to the point, where we illustrate a technology. In the second half, we open it up, open mic, they ask questions. These started out in person, and then they moved to virtually. When COVID hit, this was very, Teams was very useful in solving a business challenge. It was able to bring some consistency and clarity and minimize the chaos disruption when we went home. It also was very valuable, particularly in the channels that we used as war room. At TWC, we were inundated, some 20% to 80% on some of our systems were just crashing with the unemployment insurance claims and the stimulus and the unemployment related tax activity. So we had to increase our infrastructure some tenfold in a matter of days and weeks. Normally that would have took 6 months minimum, and we had went to 24 hours. And the Teams war room channels that we used were very effective, where we literally did some of the stuff almost on the fly with some of our partners from DIR, trying to increase our infrastructure and our vertical clustering and so forth. But I believe one of the avenues that helped us be successful with our Teams rollout was it was very simple. We had got executive support and found out what was important to them. We listened to the customer. Some of them didn't like the additional features. They just wanted this, that, and the other. We had special sessions start out every week, and we had since gone to trying to do twice a month. But we had special sessions on the all persistent chat. Some of the questions that were asked at the beginning of the meeting, I had those same questions asked. We had sessions on Stream, Microsoft Planner, Power BI, new features, Teams live events. And another thing that's really helped us, we formed a cross-functional Tiger team. Some of the players are not IT, they're from the business. In fact, our last Tech Talk coffee break that featured team live events was done from one of the business owners who was on the Tiger team. IT didn't do that. So it's kind of a win-win for us. We are bringing the business along on the IT journey. We're making sure these tools are very engaging and useful for them. And administratively, it cuts off a little the work that IT usually has to do. I think as Joy and Michael can attest, putting these type of events together, it's a lot of work. So we have folks on the Tiger team who are not IT who are helping us with our challenge. We have trained since January over 2,700 folks. Most of those are unique folks, or some of them repeat on different topics within the Microsoft Teams O365 family. These have been so popular, we've been asked to continue these from our execs. And I don't see them slowing down. Currently, we're on a twice a month cadence. We'll might just have one this month due to Thanksgiving, because we have them on Thursdays, by the way. Let's see. Any questions thus far?
Chris, I just want to make a comment that the inclusion of the business groups, when I see our friends in IT working with the business and including them in like the Tiger teams and including them in the decision-making process, we're running governance workshops for our agencies. And when they include the business users in that, we find that it is so much more successful, because oftentimes it's difficult when we're in IT to understand what are the needs of the business and why if I turn that feature off, what is that going to impact in their world? Yeah.
Right. Including the business has been very helpful for the Tiger team, making sure our topics are current and relevant to what they're interested in. We also included someone from our accessibility team. So making sure when we present these, we're keeping in mind the accessibility features that are most important, particularly with some of our VR staff, our vocational rehab folks that work with some hearing challenge and visually challenged folks. So
wonderful. And now, Chris, when you talked about getting the executive support, how did you go about? What was the kind of the impetus behind that, and how did you go about getting them to support y'all, and how did you get them to support the rollout of really a fully featured Teams infrastructure?
Sure. We had started because I was concerned with our multi-factor authentication rollout. Part of our advanced threat protection that's offered from our Microsoft license was not being utilized the way I wanted it to. And then I realized some of the other features, hey, I don't even know if they know about this. Our Civil Rights Division wanted to take us up on going digital. Our CIO is very digitally minded, Heather Hall, and they had a lot of questions. And what I realized, just by utilizing some of the Microsoft tools that we already paid for, it could help them on their digital journey. And they started going completely digital in civil rights prior to COVID. And we added one additional tool, Microsoft Lens, that's already paid for, and it helped them. But the impetus was multi-factor authentication. And then we realized, hey, these other tools are grossly underutilized. And we went with 10 tools, and we presented what they were and their capabilities. And we follow up with a one-on-one meeting with each exec and some of their teams and what their business was and what's most important to them. So, and we get it. You know, we wanted to keep it simple. You know,
Yeah.
I told you the story, Michael, how I had some cable work done uh, for my TV at home, right? And the gentleman showed me all kind of gadgets and wires, and I finally just had to say, I just want to watch the game. All that is great. I just want to watch the game. So when we bring these new technologies and all these features, rich sets and capabilities, I'm always cognizant. Sometimes the player just want to watch the game. What's important to them? And different executives, they had different interests in different feature sets that we showed them. A lot of them were interested in Microsoft Planner because that was a way for them to transfer their WIP boards. At TWC, we have work in process board. So if you're familiar with Lean or Six Sigma, you understand what I'm talking about. But it gave them an electronic way to show their work in process and where they were and keep up with folks who were at home and where they were in their status items and their hot items.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just close by saying, just keeping it simple. The executive support, having short trainings are kind of fun. You know, these Microsoft Tech Talk coffee breaks, at the most they're an hour. They're usually 45 minutes to an hour. You know, I dare say if I would have sent those same invites out to 2-hour meetings, 3-hour meetings, half-a-day trainings, I dare say we probably would not have had, you know, almost 3,000 folks bite on them.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really good word. So I want to open it up. If anyone would like to ask a question to Chris and how they did things at TWC, then you can put that into the chat, or if you'd like to come off mute, this is an open forum, so definitely welcome. And I've got some questions for you, Chris, if they don't.
Okay. Yeah, you know, and so Teams is clearly the front runner, right? It might not have been the front runner 9 months ago, 10 months ago. We still have Zoom, right? And Zoom is Zoom. We also have Cisco WebEx, and some of the folks very passionate about the Adobe Connect, but clearly Teams is the front runner. And again, it just serves a business need, very timely, and was just kind of easy to work with the other Microsoft tools that are already in place.
Say,
Yeah.
Michael, did you see Russell's in the chat? I figured since you weren't presenting anymore, I kind of had released some of my management.
Yes, I saw that there.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. Yeah, Russell. So this was when I worked at a previous company, and so I don't know those scripts to move chats and files from channel to channel. I can do a little Googling around, but that's what I would do. It really is going to take somebody that understands, and it's really SharePoint skills to do to use the PowerShell to move those around. But I can do some digging for you. If you don't mind, Russell, sending me an email, I will. I'll put my email address here in the chat real quick for you. There you go.
Hey, Chris, thanks for your presentation.
Sure.
Congratulations on your success so far. Do you have any tips on wrangling the channels?
You want to try to have, yeah, I would say keep it simple. You know, as far as who can have a channel, have some governance around that. You know, it might make sense that your division have a channel, and anything under that, it could be, you know, a different structure. But I wouldn't try to have too many, or otherwise it's going to be, you know, daunting to try to manage that.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
Star Donovan's got their hand up. Star, are you able to?
Yeah, I have a question for Chris.
Hello.
Hello. Chris, you mentioned when you started doing these talks that you would have a small, easily digestible thing on a certain technology. So does that mean for Teams it was multiple rather than just one Teams meeting, that you like broke it into, we're going to have a thing on chat and then we'll have a Q&A, and on the next one we'll have something on Teams proper, and then we'll have a Q&A? Or did you manage to fit it all into one? And if so, how long was it?
No, we broke them up. For example, we had, the Teams meeting. That was very popular. I think we had about 5 or 6 sessions on those. Then we have what we call the staff teams, which is the channels. Then we had the chats, lots of information on chats, and some of it we were using chat. Some folks using chat in place of email, and can you erase chat, and how long can you retain chat? So we had I think 2 or 3 sessions on chat. We had one on Stream, one on Planner. We had the latest we've been having on the live events. Lots of questions about the live events. So we usually have a feature topic with some other. This is what's new. So example, in our last tech talk, we had one on IT live events. Teams live events. But we also showed them, hey, by the way, your standard team is up to 300 now. So if 200 was that cutoff, you don't need to do a live event. So that answers a lot of questions and concerns.
So a follow-up question, because you mentioned about like having channels. But then you also mentioned about the 300 size limit on Teams meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have multiple teams, or do you have one org-wide team with separate channels?
Well, so in IT, we have multiple teams, but I don't encourage too many folks to have multiple teams. And I have multiple teams because some of them are kind of the dev and testing stuff out. So we have multiple teams.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to ask real quick, again, kind of a tangent. You mentioned that you guys produce illustrations for these talks. Are those, or use illustrations? Are those in-house produced, or like, do you have an in-house team that just produces the illustrations, and what kind of lead time do they have for that?
So yeah, that's what takes up a little time. Those are in-house illustrations where we show folks how to do things. Another one that was very popular was setting up your custom backgrounds. Had a lot of interest in that. So we show them some of the best ways to do that. But those are in-house. They take at least 2 or 3 weeks, I think. So we always try to have material we're going to show 2 weeks in advance, have all those locked down, so we can just on go live day, we just go and show what we want to show. And sometimes we'll get a question from, any technical questions is open game, but we'll get a question from 3 or 4 months ago. How do you do? And we can either we'll answer the question, and we'll usually refer them to the recorded session where we show in detail how to do that as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
In fact, let me, Chris, just real quick, let me bring up that deck that I talked about earlier around organizing teams and channels. And this is that companion slide deck that I talked about that comes along with this. And so this is an example of one of the organizational approaches. And so different teams and different like human resources or finance or payroll or whatever the case might be, IT. And then here's one more around project based. And then there's some really good guidance on example teams and channels just to give some ideas. And then cross-organizational teams that could be a logical structure. And again, I think that the important point here is that one of these approaches is not the right way. I think it is actually how do you leverage multiple of these approaches. And so sometimes you actually have like a matrix of teams that you could use. So it's important not to have duplication. And not to just go crazy with teams, and not to create a team when you could just use a channel. But there, again, that video that I'll send you all the link to is very good, and it goes through each of these slides and then talks about the ideas and the strategies behind each of those slides.
Hey, Mike, I got another hand up, and it
please.
is Russell.
Russell, please.
Hey, my question was actually for what's his name, Chris, I think.
Yes, Chris.
Hey, Russell.
Hey,
Go ahead, Russell.
So I was wondering, you said y'all implemented a few of y'all's Office 365 applications with Teams. Have y'all explored the Power Automate and all that function that it can bring to Teams? Have y'all done anything like that yet?
We're in the process of exploring, particularly Power Automate. We did look at Power BI. A couple of the divisions are currently using Tableau very extensively, but we do have a window where, for some of the what they call light work, they're using Power BI that's already paid for and a lot easier on the price tag. So, but Power Automate, we are looking at that as well.
And we do have some agencies that have weighted in pretty heavily on Power Automate, and so, but it's really, I think we're just getting started,
Right.
and I think one of the things that that is important to understand about Power Automate and Power Apps is the governance behind that and how to set that up properly and how to control who makes the Power Automates and how those are managed. And so we do have some good governance information around that. There's some great workshops that are available through your unified contract. So if you are interested in more information about that and around some of those workshops, then I'd love to connect you with if you don't already know your CSAM, your technical account manager, then they can help you get those governance workshops set up. Good question there. Is there anyone that would like to share some of the things that they have done around adoption and what worked well for them or what didn't work? We definitely would love to hear your experiences as well.
Michael, you know that we participated in the governance offering that you guys have, and as somebody who's participated in that, I highly recommend it. Even though you've gone through and adopted and implemented, I still think it's it was a very good way to kind of reevaluate where you are and where you want to go. So that's been our experience here at the AG's office.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Keith. Yes, I remember that was the first governance workshop that I had gone through, and I was so impressed with the content that I've recommended that to several agencies, and we have actually one that's going through it today, then another agency that is using that same workshop next week.
Cool.
Thanks for your your endorsement on that, Keith.
And
so I see Elizabeth
okay, you saw the hands
has
up?
had her hand up. Yeah, Elizabeth, please.
Hey there, Michael. As you are aware, you worked really closely with us in our implementation of Teams, and I just thought I'd highly recommend going through the Fast Track program for any of your technical questions. But we set up a whole champions group and really rolled it out, engaging all of the different point people within our divisions, and so it's been real successful in our organization. We are due to, and I've got a couple action items to talk to you, Michael, just on some kind of refresher training, since we rolled it out right at the beginning of March, mid-March, right in the middle of all the COVID happening. So, but the champions group worked great. Your champion success kit, all of that functionality. I love the day in life. So I'm glad to see that you have additional guides. So I plan on digging into those more. I think those really help with just people that are trying to, figure out when they're first rolling it out, like how they would use the functionality.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you, Elizabeth. And I really strongly suggest creating a champions group. So this was actually the slide deck that we used when I worked with Elizabeth. And the thing about champions inside of your organization and why that's so important is that people they're most preferred learning method that is also most effective is a coworker, a non-manager and non-IT. No offense to all of our IT friends that are on this call with us, but really having people that work in the group with them and leaning in and training and highly training certain people within each of these groups proves to be very successful. And Elizabeth, y'all saw that there at the Secretary of State.
Yes, we did for sure. And it also, it helps too, especially since things were so crazy at the beginning of COVID and we were trying to, get the whole workforce stood up remotely. It helps, field questions and helps the other users as well within their division so that they can, as you said, learn from a coworker. It's a little less intimidating, I think, for those folks to ask one of their, closer coworker peers questions about the new software.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And if you just put big long, as Chris said, if they'd have made these half-day trainings or even 2-hour trainings, it probably would not have been that effective. And I think that's why having someone that they can go to, or taking that learning pathway site, embedding it in teams where they just have these little snackable bits of content. So those videos that are on the meetings and things, they're no more than 10 minutes, and most of them are 3 minutes long. And so it's just the information that you need when you need it versus something that really feels daunting and you just can't fit into your schedule. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Yeah, it was those videos were real helpful, and also the tips. I did a bunch of the tip of the day when we were rolling it out for at least like the first month or so. So
that's awesome. Tip of the day is great. If your organization is less than 20,000, I think it's 20,000 now, the max number of members in a team site for an organization-wide team, I think, is 20,000 now. So if you're larger than that, I'm sorry. If you're smaller than that, then having a site where someone can go and ask questions, and having your champions help monitor that site and provide links to either training videos or just answer questions about how to leverage capabilities in Office 365 or Teams can be a really effective way. Teacher Retirement System did a very good job of that, and they have a whole team site now. And that's another value of the persistent chat, is someone can actually go back and scroll through questions asked and answers given and learn a lot just by the questions that their peers had that they may not have even thought of. So yeah, thank you very much, Elizabeth. I also see that Vincent Sellers has his hand up.
Yeah, I just want to just share real quick. I'll try not to drone on and put everyone to sleep. But we had a very successful implementation, in my opinion, this year, and Michael helped us with various things, and a couple of the other agencies, and DIR, and actually Texas Workforce Commission, Heather there answered some questions for us. So it helps having a community to bounce things off. But I think our success is we kind of started with the hard part first. So we did a pilot, if you will, with our information security and IT divisions only, and then immediately engaged the last people I usually want to talk to, which is our legal people, or open records, and all the records retention and litigation hold, and all the people that always put the brakes on anything or put in all these rules. We pulled them in up front before trying to roll anything out, and got agreement with the way all those retention policies and everything would work. And if anyone wants to ask me what we do, I'm happy to talk more on offline. I put my email in the chat earlier. Yeah, we got that stuff set up front, and then it was a matter of all right, let's reach out to all our business divisions. We have about 30 that vary in size, from a dozen people to several hundred, and literally met with each division up front, gave them a demo to kind of get their appetites up for Teams. Met with them to determine what their day one structure would be, so they're not just starting from a blank slate. So what some of the others have mentioned, we kind of had a division-wide team for every team as a standard, but then from there, smaller divisions, they're fine. They started off with just their division team. If you got a dozen people, start small, and then we could help add them. But then other divisions, we had major organizational kind of structures underneath several hundred person divisions. So on day one, we had all that built for them so they could start using it. And then after we went live, then we went back and met with each division a few weeks after go live to see what the utilization was, answer questions and everything. So we just divided and conquered and had, it seems like a gazillion meetings with divisions, but that's kind of where the rubber met the road. And I mean, you can't overstate, and Chris, his presentation was great. I loved his comment about, the cable installation and people just want to watch the game. We get excited with all the features teams can do, but at the end of the day, most of the users are like, where do I click? Like, why is it, just real basic usage. And you guys have seen it, like the difference between starting a new conversation versus replies, that kind of stuff. You can't overstate just focusing on the simple things and get people on the hook. And once they start using it, is very successful. So anyway, that's kind of a brief overview of our journey. And just one thing coming up, we've got kind of biting off the live events, biting that off and chewing that. And we're going to do an entire agency, about 3,000 people, holiday event using live events with our executives and the comptroller. And then that's in December. And then in January, we're going to provide our biennial revenue estimate, which is usually a big deal at the Capitol. You've got the whole legislature and the media and all that, usually in person, but we're going to do it with Teams live events. I'm helping our communications folks get that ironed out, but we will be using our instance of live events for that. And that's a big focus for us. So maybe in the future, I can talk about how well that went, or if it's a disaster, you'll read about it in the paper and you'll know that Vince failed miserably. But anyway, I think it's going to go fine though. It's really neat. So anyway,
Yeah,
that's all I got.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And your idea about setting up the structures, the teams and the channel structure and putting people as members into teams it out is it's a fantastic way to go. So that way, when they log in the first time, they see, oh, I'm in the HR group. There's my HR team site. My coworkers are members. There's a chat already started by our leadership.
Absolutely.
Fantastic best practice. Thank you.
And the break room. That's where we told people go first. Just, you can't screw it up. Go in the break room, crack a joke, and have some fun in the break room. And then you'll start learning how to post, and you can put your dog's picture out there or whatever. So just go out and have fun. That's what we told people to do. Have fun. This is fun. And the next thing you know, people are having fun and socializing since they can't see each other in person. And then they actually start using it for work. What a concept.
That's awesome. I just want to say thank you so much to all of y'all for participating in the great questions. I want to say thank you especially to Texas Workforce Commission, to Chris. It was so generous with his time and putting his content together and helping me prepare for this. So if you're still on here and you don't mind, we love to get your evaluation of what you liked about today. And if you have any suggestions for future events, then there's a section on the eval for that. And with that, then I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And again, just say thank you to all of you for your continued support of our team, community, and all of us working together so well. I'll stop the recording.